Welcome to
Just a Bit Outside.
Now I want to tell a story about Jeff Pratt. Couple stories. Now, this is down here in Florida. This is a guy I used to work with here at the Hyatt Regency West Shore, now known as the Grand Hyatt here in Tampa. Jeff had personality. He had personality. Now here's the thing, Jeff loved to eat. He was not a fat guy. By no means was he a fat guy. But he loved to eat. And I can remember talking to Jeff one time, and we had an employee cafeteria that people used to call Flamingos, and I remember asking Jeff, hey, what are they serving down at Flamingos today? Because I was ready to go eat and I was hungry. Well, Jeff reaches into his pants pocket, his shorts pocket, and he pulls out a drumstick. He goes, oh, they have fried chicken. You want a piece? Needless to say, I turned it down. Now, my buddy Joe told me that one time he was in this bell closet with Jeff, and he's talking to him, and he goes, I keep smelling sausage. Where's the sausage? Jeff reached into his pocket, pulled out a hot dog. Same thing. He goes, yeah, they have hot dogs down there. Same thing. So here's the part about Jeff was that we went on a cruise one time, and they had this big turkey in the back of the boat, and the storm comes up on the boat. We're out in the bay, just near McDill Air Force Base in that area. And this storm just came out of nowhere, and it's rocking the boat. And I remember sitting there, and I was getting seasick. And a lot of other people, same thing. So I'm just trying to deal with this. I still remember looking over at Jeff, standing over this big, huge turkey, and he's rocking with the boat, eating the turkey. Now, one of the things he did do that used to make us mad, though, was that we had a cab driver. The guy's name was Joe. He would come in every morning. Now, we sent Joe a lot of business. We really liked the guy. We talked football and all sorts of things to him. Joe was just a really good guy, and he was a cab driver that was in there every day. And every morning around 7 a.m., he'd go out and he'd buy a dozen donuts from Dunkin' Donuts. He'd bring it in for the valets and anybody on staff to just thank us for, sending a business. This was a daily thing. Heaven forbid you come in there late, because what would happen with Jeff was that Jeff loved to eat those donuts. He loved the donuts. So what he would do is he'd open the box and he'd take a bite out of every single donut. So you come in there, you see the box, all right, donuts. And then you open it up and it's like, never mind. I will miss Jeff. I really will. He was a fun person to talk to. He always had a smile on his face. I don't want to make him sound like, in a bad way, because everybody has a favorite memory of Jeff. And he was one of those people that you really enjoyed talking to. Now, from there, I'm going to talk about my Uncle Lowell. Now, he actually died several years ago. He was definitely a lot rowdier when he was younger. Now, at one point back in the 1970s, he owned a bar. And the story was that a guy came in there and was just causing all sorts of problems. My uncle, he was not the kind of person that tolerated stuff. He did not like it. So this guy's creating problems. My uncle goes over there. It's like, time for you to leave. He's dealing with this guy. And the guy pulls a gun on him. Don't do that with my Uncle Lowell. He knocked the gun out of the guy's hand and beat the snot out of him. Most people, I don't know how you'd react with a gun pulled on you, but my uncle, okay. So he also had a parrot that I'll never forget. Now later on, he had become a Christian. He owned this little, what they called cash and carry stores. I don't want to say gas station with convenience store, because that sounds too much like the 7-Elevens and Circle K's we see. No, this was a mom and pop store he owned. And he always had this parrot he kept in there, and this parrot said everything my uncle did. My uncle had some issues with the way he would speak, plus also a thick West Virginia accent. So a lot of times I didn't understand what he was saying. Well, guess what? I didn't understand what the parrot said half the time either. But one thing I do remember is a lot of his customers were pretty much friends and townsfolk in this little town called Farrellsburg, West Virginia. They'd come in there and they taught this bird to wolf whistle. So anytime you're around that parrot, all you have to do is, and that bird would go right along with you and it'd wolf whistle. So, and we'll move on from there. We're going to talk a little bit about my cousin. Now, my cousin Jim, we all knew him as Little Jim. He was actually a little bit on the tall side, which is kind of how the nickname Little Jim came into being. Now, I spent a summer with them in Maryland when I was 15, but I had also gone up to Maryland to visit them more than once when they lived in there. So I remember this place where this happened, this lake. And he told me this story about he went out to this lake one time. Now this lake had paddle boarding, it had canoeing, they had a little dock you could walk out on. It was just a wonderful place to go spend some time on a summer day, especially when you're like a teenager. And he told me the story. He went out there one day. The sun is high up in the sky. It's probably in the 80s. And he had this long reclining deck chair that he decided to lay on, or lawn chair. And he sits down on it and he's just enjoying the weather. He's enjoying the day. It's a beautiful day. So he leans back on it and he decides to take a little snooze. And he takes his hands like this and goes to sleep. 3 hours later, he woke up. And they told me, and he told me, that he went for, I think, a couple weeks in absolute agony from the sunburn, except for this part here in the shape of his hands that was the same color as my shirt. So, but I will say this about my cousin Jim. He did serve his country in more than one service in the military. He did serve the Persian Gulf. He was a really good guy. He would give you the shirt off his back. I'm going to tell you also, we also had another cousin named Ken that loved to tell the story how this girl was pestering him. He just bought a soft serve ice cream cone. She wouldn't shut up, so he just took it and went right in the face. Shut her up. So anyway, I hope you're enjoying these stories. I only have just a few more. Another one's going to be a person that we knew here in Clearwater. I don't want to share this just because some of the people that knew him, he was pretty popular. He was a really good guy. This was pretty much a person in a leadership position in a church I went to, and he had a lot of things that he did that just were so good that I don't want people thinking, well, is this the only memory you have of him? So I'm going to leave his name out of this story. But the people that knew him would know the name instantly. Well, what happened was this person got cancer, unfortunately. He put up a great fight against his cancer. He really did. Usually when people get this form of cancer, they're usually dead within a couple months. This person hung on for a year and a half, and I think he did pretty dang well from this cancer. Unfortunately, in the end, he ended up in hospice. So a group of us friends decided, you know what, he may not have time left, at least not very much time, we felt. Once you go into hospice, that's usually pretty bad news. So he's in this hospice room, and we're all visiting him, and he was so happy. You could tell he was happy that we're there to visit him. So somebody says, why don't we go down to this room? It was like a little sunroom that had these windows where you could see out, and he thought it was a good idea. So they put him in the wheelchair, we took him down to this observation room, and you could see out all these windows, and this is beautiful. You can see all these trees. It had a little walking trail, little boardwalk. It had a little area in the center where you could just stand and relax. So they're talking to him, and he's just looking out the window also. I'm standing in a different part, and I'm looking out the window. Now I'm looking over into this little boardwalk, and I'm seeing this guy with these roses in his hand. And I can tell this man has a heavy heart. Obviously, if he's at a hospice, there's not much time left for him. So he's standing there with the roses, and I'm looking at the heartbreak in his face, and my heart is breaking for him. Not only that, because also I had lost my own dad just a few months before, so I knew about the grief of losing a loved one, still very fresh in my mind. So I'm looking over and I'm seeing this guy, and my heart is just breaking for him. And out of the blue, you could hear it through the entire room, was the loudest fart I have ever heard in my life. I mean, the loudest fart. And this is not a person that did stuff like that. And everybody turned and looked at him like, did you really just... He looked straight, didn't say a word. So, most people that were there, you're going to remember that memory. Other than that, I just want to tell one other story. This is about my friend Paul Durlin. Paul lives out in Colorado. I knew him from the Springs. He was one of the first people I became friends with when I moved out there. I became friends with his wife also. We had taken a class together. Now, here's the weird thing with Beth. She got appendicitis in the time that we were taking this class together. It turned out that there was some fatty material around where her appendix had burst that covered it up. So she walked around with appendicitis, with a burst appendix for 2 weeks. Didn't know it. Now, the first time they had taken her to the doctor didn't find anything, so there was no real diagnosis, so they sent her home. But 2 weeks later, she went by ambulance, and I remember visiting her in the hospital and just thinking, how did you survive for 2 weeks with appendicitis? But she did. And she did hang on for many years. Unfortunately, we lost her to cancer. Now, what I liked about Beth was she was a straight shooter when we dealt with her. We took this class together, and we had an exercise called Lifeboat. And basically, they give you so many straws. And I figured out the point of this class. The point of the class when they give you these straws is you want to have as many straws as possible, but you definitely want to keep one straw for yourself in this. But the goal is whoever had the most straws, they're the ones that got on the lifeboat. Everybody else on the ship drowned. It was a very emotionally gut-wrenching exercise. I remember just feeling real pain when I'm dealing with that. Well, I knew about keeping one straw for yourself. What the message of keeping one straw was, that was you were voting for yourself. It meant that you valued yourself because you knew your loved ones need you. You had to do everything possible to survive. Now, if I were actually on a sinking ship in real life, I don't care about my life. I'm going to save as many people as possible. Because I'm concerned about, are they going to make it to heaven? I'm concerned about, them just getting back to their loved ones. But I knew the point of the exercise, so I held on to that last one. Somebody else had already talked me out of the one or two that I had before. So I get to Beth, and I'm not going to give up that last straw. I am not going to give it up. Now, here's this friend of mine, and you want to talk about letting me have it. It's like, it was like she took it personally. The funny thing is, after the exercise was over, we're friends again. But one of the things I remember was I have never seen anybody let me have it like she did that day. That's one of the memories I have of her. But she was a very generous person. And like I said, she was a straight shooter. If you wanted an honest opinion, she was going to give it to you. In the meantime, I really hope that you guys enjoyed this. I will name a few other people that sadly I've lost, that I have memories of, but I don't really have a funny story per se. Juanita Greenwood, went to Bethel High School with her. We did drama with her. She was one of the warmest people I'd ever known. She was actually my friend Mike's sister, but everybody loved Juanita. Mary Delaney Bray, went to Bethel with her also. Didn't really get to know her as much until I started talking to her on Facebook. Found out we had a lot of opinions in common, and we actually had a great time talking to each other. Unfortunately, she got cancer, and it took her really quickly, sadly. Shawn Paynter, those of you who live out in Denver, you're going to remember Shawn. I could tell some Shawn stories, but I don't know how well they would come out on camera, so I decided to reserve those. But anybody that knew Shawn, they have a story to tell. Beth Shields Erickson is another one. By the way, thanks to Stephen, her husband, for sharing with me some pictures that are going to go into the end of this video. And I hope you guys have a wonderful day. I hope that this brought you some comfort. I hope it brought some of you a few laughs, because that's what we need to have, is laughter. We can't simply just mourn their loss. We need to celebrate their life also. In the meantime, thanks for watching Just a Bit Outside. Hope you have a great day.
Just a bit outside.